Hi, everybody. My name is Barbara Dillon. I am the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Fanbase Press. For those watching at home who may be unfamiliar, Fanbase Press is a GLAAD Media Award-winning and Eisner and Harvey Awards nominated comic book publisher and media outlet. We like to do informal conversations like this one, both in person and virtually, as part of our 15th anniversary Build Your Community initiative, which is really aiming to bring together our community, to bring us closer together, to initiate and welcome conversations that are productive and empathetic. And that's exactly what we hope to do today. The purpose of our Get Involved in Local Politics virtual forum is to have an informal conversation to not only hear the advice of politically active individuals, but to discuss and troubleshoot how to get involved in your own community. So first and foremost, I want to extend my immense thanks to our featured panelists, whom I will introduce in a moment, for being willing to share their time, their talents, and insights with us today. And I want to also extend our thanks to our attendees for engaging in this conversation. If you have questions during the session, please feel free to list them in the chat, or there will be time later in the conversation to raise those vocally as well. But without further ado, let me introduce our featured panelists. First, we have Matthew No, who is lead collection and knowledge management librarian at Harvard Medical School, an instructor for both the University of Kentucky and Library Juice Academy, and a trustee for the Worcester Public Library. He is a former president for the American Library Association's Graphic Novel and Comics Roundtable and the treasurer for the Graphic Medicine International Collective. Matthew also contributed a foreword to Fanbase Press's title Ripple Effects, and while continuing to take on way too many things in his spare time, which is non-existent, he tries to find time to be good. Be kind, do good, and read comics. So Matthew, thank you so much for being here. In addition, we are joined by Jose Pimienta. Jose was raised in Mexicali, Baja California, and now resides in Burbank, California, where they work on comics and storyboards for animation and film. Suncatcher was their debut YA graphic novel and was included on many best of lists. Their second graphic novel, Twin Cities, received four-star reviews. I'm having such a hard time speaking today. In their stories, they focus on the importance of Latinx culture and the experience of growing up on the border. So, Jose, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and dive into the conversation. And Matthew, we'll start with you. I'd be curious to hear three specific causes, organizations, or other opportunities that you've been involved with in your area.
Sure. So I was trying to think about how to frame specific causes, organizations, or opportunities, right? So I guess I'll do like I'll throw back from way back in the day and then think about where we are now, right? So um see, I'm 36 now as we're recording, so I was an undergrad during, Occupy, the first go round of all of that. Was heavily engaged in sustainability efforts and challenges. I went to the University of Kentucky, so this was thinking about, fighting the myth of clean coal and trying to camp out and take down they demolished an entire like city block in downtown Lexington, Kentucky, of like old rundown buildings that had bars and all these hangouts in them so that they could build like a glamorous hotel in advance of the equestrian games that were being held there. So there was like protesting around that and trying to educate around that and rehome these communities. And then it comes to find out it took them so long to actually build the hotel, right? That it wasn't ready for these equestrian games in the first place. So that we did a lot of like campaigning and trying to fight back all this monetized efforts and they tried to wash away the view of the reality of downtown Lexington, which is the reality of downtown in every major city today still, that unhoused folks are around. They literally rounded them all up and moved them to another place, and then let them come back after the game so that it wasn't, a visible concern. So trying to provide like whatever care we could to people, like getting them resources, connecting people with resources. And at the time, like I'm a broke college student and we're doing our best and trying to do everything we can. Yeah, the thumbs down is very fair. And like this was, 12 to 15 years ago, we were doing all this stuff, right? And now we're dealing with the same issues, just at a bigger scale almost. We were talking a little before the recording about like public parks came up, and now we've got police patrols all over the parks here, people getting moved away out of benches, and it's like, and now I'm in a completely different place. I'm in Worcester, Massachusetts, uh, which, you know, the world thinks of Massachusetts as this more progressive, safe kind of place, and in some ways, yes, but in a lot of ways, you know, policing culture is just as strong here, especially when you get to Boston. You know, there's a long history of, you know, police culture there that we don't have time for. Uh, but so dealing with that kind of stuff in education, it's been a long path for me. And I'm not very, you know, extroverted, outgoing. And so I've always, even before being a librarian, I was very much in the like information gathering, sharing and getting people to come to events and doing the behind the scenes kind of thing rather than standing up at a rally with a megaphone, right? That's not my thing. I more get the people there. Um, and then more recently, I guess the two recent things are, and we'll talk more about one of these in a bit. Like I'm a board member for the Worcester Public Library. I was asked to be involved in that. Like I'm always encouraging other librarians to be board members or trustees wherever they can, right? I don't work in the library system in the city I live in. I work as a library in Boston, but I live out in Worcester. So if that's a similar situation for people, you know, you can't you can't work and be on the board at the same library system, right? But so if you work in an academic library, that's a real opportunity for you to give back and get involved to the profession and show some solidarity across type of library lines, right? Um, Prior to the last 9 months, we probably would have said academic librarians are in a safer position than public librarians. That is no longer the case. However much it was the case before, it's very much not true now, especially for someone who works at Harvard. And so it's a chance for us to build that solidarity and work together and think about how we can support each other. I always say to my fellow board members that like I'm here to represent the staff's needs and staff's interests, right? Because without them, the library doesn't function, and often that voice gets lost in these higher level conversations where it becomes about working with the city council and all of that. Then the other thing is working on like I don't work directly on any local political campaigns, but I'm often like trying to rally the troops and all that, right? Like we've had meetings here about activating the apartment building I live in, for example. I live downtown. It's a very transient college younger age group community. I also work at a poll. I'm a poll worker at our voting location in my area, right? And I see how terrible the turnout is. Even though there are like 3,000 registered voters downtown, we see like 150 of them at most on an election day. So trying to figure out ways to get more people here without getting anyone evicted, because my building very much considers door knocking solicitation and is not allowed in the building. So so we're like uh doing like guerrilla flyering and that sort of thing, and thinking about how we can get respective groups in that no one can say no to without it becoming a backlash. For example, we worked with a neighbor of ours who's part of the League of Women Voters here in Worcester, right? And they did a registration drive in the building. And we got away with that in part because you don't want the backlash of saying no to the League of Women Voters offering to do something in your building. It can become a whole thing, right? So finding ways to make it like possible to get around these absurd uh, barriers people put in place is something I like trying to do as well. I feel like that was a lot of monologuing. I'll
That's
stop.
no, that's fantastic information. I think that's good context for folks to know, again, the organizations you've been involved with
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
day-to-day activities that you've been doing. So thank you for that. Jose, we'll turn to you. Likewise, what kinds of causes or organizations have you been involved with, and what does that look like day to day?
Yeah, so the more formal side of things that I mean I have recently become like that person in City Hall who just like there they go again. They got something to talk about with purpose. Like for instance, in the past couple of years since I've been living in Burbank, I've been very vocal about the need to be vocal about Free Palestine. and why it's important and why it's important just to acknowledge that even if at a local jurisdiction, like the local government cannot really do much per se, but I do think that it's something important to get recognized. Also, like there's a social active organization here in the city of Burbank called Burbank for Free Palestine, which is formed predominantly by, well, Burbank residents and allies who are just regular day-to-day people who go about their lives, but every Wednesday they get together in a public space and just wave flags and just try to raise awareness. And that's great because, again, like a lot of the people that have been doing that for the past almost year and a half, a little over a year and a half now. I don't know if any of them would consider themselves politically active, but because of what happened and what has been happening, they just saw the need of, like, we can't be quiet anymore, so we have to, like, at least, like, vocalize it. And that organization, Burbank Free Palestine, has taken many forms over the past year and a half or so. So I used to hang out with them a lot more. Recently, due to life, I just haven't been as active with them. But for about a year-ish, if not a little longer, I was very active with them and very present. The other one, which is one of the things that I'm loudest about, is that I'm a participant with the Burbank Tenant Union here in Burbank, which, again, kind of similar to what Matthew was saying, where it's just like, housing is a human right, and we have to advocate for people to be able to vocalize their concerns. But for a lot of reasons, that's been, like, also like a bit of the way that you're perceived by the way that you're perceived versus the work that you're doing and organizing and advocating. And that's one of the things that's one of the causes that I've been loudest about. Some of the other ones that are both for fun and because they're important is also advocating for the need for I don't want to use the term alternative, but for lack of a better one, like the need to advocate for alternative modes of transportation, predominantly in a city like Burbank, which is very residential, which used to be a suburb of Los Angeles. But it's very car centric, and that's a problem that we have not only in the United States, but very specifically in California and in Burbank, where it's like like the idea of public transportation comes with it comes with, like, a lot of stigmas and connotations that I do not care for and I'm very angry about. So I see the need for advocating of, like, we need better public transportation for all the reasons, whether it's environmental, whether it's safety, whether it's tax purposes, et cetera, et cetera. But also, like, I wasn't planning on saying this until, like, right now thinking about it, is that it's like I'm also, like, engaged in other ways. Like, for instance, as a non-binary person who makes comics, like, one of my missions in life is to make comics where there is non-binary representation, if not full on trans representation in storytelling. And that is something that, like, I have made it part of, like, my goal as a comics creator, that, like, regardless of the story that I'm telling or regardless of the story that I'm working on, trying to find a space where we could put in more diversity of those characters, whether or not that's what the story is about, but just, like, bringing them to the forefront. And I mean, like, that's not necessarily, like, political in the way of, like, I don't hang out with other organizations per se, but it is something that I do on my regular basis. It is something that I do while posting online and talking to other friends, because it really comes down to that terrible saying, but it's accurate, that, like, there are moments where just your existence is political. So as far as, like, seeing those as being part of the cause or seeing how to engage with it, um, I think it's important. So those are some of those.
That's great. Thank you, Jose. This next question, I just want to open to both of you. So if one of you feels strongly about answering, please feel free to jump in. But when folks do want to get involved, they may be just unsure of where to begin.
Right.
First, what do you feel is the first step in getting involved politically in your area? And then what are some healthy expectations to have
Mm.
about getting involved?
Matthew, you want to go first, or no? Okay.
Yeah,
So
you go ahead.
sure. So first and foremost, for anyone who decides that they want to get involved, already pat on the back, clap, a round of applause. Great. That's the first step. Fantastic. Like, you've seen the need for, like, you've seen a cause that you think that should be stronger. By all means, pick that lane and stay strong. And yes, as far as getting involved, that can take many, many forms. I'll tell you this, like for instance, like I didn't I on like 5 years ago, I don't think I would have been one of those people that says I want to get involved with housing as a human right or tenant advocacy. Like that was out of my just out of sight and therefore out of mind. But because I listened to someone who just said, "Hey, like everyone should be in a union," and I was like, "Well, as a freelance cartoonist, I don't have a labor union," and it was like, "Well, there's other types of union." I was, what? Like one of those unions is tenant unions. I'm like, and this is when I was living in Glendale, California, which is Burbank's neighbor. So I just Googled Glendale tenant union. Turns out that they did have one. So I just attended a meeting in the most noobish way possible of like, didn't want to say anything, didn't want to talk to anybody. I'm just here to observe. I'm just here to learn. I don't know. Like I don't really have problems. I don't want to cause problems. I'm just really it's a but little by little, just constantly showing up and just learning a little bit more about housing rights and tenant rights and housing laws and etc. I started getting a little more involved. Anyways, that's not the question. The point that I'm getting at is that when I was about to move from Glendale to Burbank, I was very distraught. I was just like, oh, my union, like I'm not going to be part of the Glendale union because I don't live in Glendale anymore. Until I just thought, like, well, why couldn't I just start a Burbank's tenant union and see how that goes? And I'm sure that, like, I mean, I've been to the Glendale Tenants Union. It's a bunch of people talking about housing. Like, I'm sure we can start somewhere. Come to find out that there was already a tenants union being started, like literally at the same time. So I just went in there and made friends and said, I have this knowledge from what I learned in Glendale. Can we apply that here? And a lot of them were also very new to organizing. So we just kicked it off. The point that I'm getting at is that good ways to start are whatever the cause that you choose, find what's accessible to you and just go in there with curiosity and open mind and just open just being willing to learn. Or if there isn't one, like for whatever reason, if there isn't a organization or a group or a social Facebook group or something of the cause that you believe in, just start one. And really that can just look of like, it can start with like, we're going to do a Zoom call once a week where we're just going to talk about the concerns. And eventually, like, you're going to start learning about, learning about your cause. You're going to be learning about what are the obstacles. You're going to be learning that, like, oh, there's other organizations in neighboring cities or in other states or in other countries where they have had that problem. And this is how they tackled it. Like, oh, great. So now you're learning. So yeah, I mean, like, I am very, very conscious of like the first step being a scary one because it is unknown and totally understandable. But I'm also a big fan of try things out, even if you're going to do them wrong. Just try them out. You'll fix it as you go along. But like as we tell everyone, whoever shows up at our meetings, this is like we didn't know everything when we first started. In fact, you could say that we didn't know a whole lot. We've just been learning as we go, and we are by no means experts, but we've just been learning as we're going. So for anyone who wants to start, great. Now just take the first step, and then you'll figure out that before you know it, you're already running because you are invested in this cause, or at least that's kind of the trajectory. Anyways, so.
That's great. Thank you, Jose. Matthew, I'll turn to you, and I will also add, given that you noted that you're a more introverted individual, do you feel that there are opportunities available for both introverted and extroverted individuals?
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't want to cover the same ground, so I was just thinking like I wrote down to my possible answers to this question. I was like, first identify what you're going to care about. Jose covered that, right? Like, and for that can be an overwhelming task for a lot of like I have opinions on basically everything there is. Been told my whole life I'm too opinionated, right? But then you have to pick like you don't have to pick, but I find it helpful to focus on one thing at a time, right? Especially if you're first starting out. You can eventually be involved in a bunch of different causes as long as your bandwidth allows, but pick one to start with, right? So for me locally, the obvious thing was I got involved in the library board in Worcester first, right? I lived here for 4 years by the time I first got on the library board. I had made some relationships there. And basically showing up and listening was how I got involved first. Like showing up, seeing what's going on, listening and sharing that I'm willing to help out, like quietly with one-on-one individuals. Like I'm not the stand up in front of the room and say, "Hey, I'll take that on," when I don't know anybody. You might be. See, that's an introvert extrovert thing. Like some people just stand up and say, "I'm ready, let's run," whereas I'm a get to know a few people closely and then see what they're up to and see where I can fill in missing gaps kind of person. So that's one like nuanced way to get in there. And then like I emphasized in my own writing notes here, getting the lay of the land matters because uh all politics is local, but all of it is going to depend on what the actual structure of your local community looks like, right? For sticking with the library board example in Worcester, it's not an elected, like you run for office kind of position. It's a you're appointed by city council position after you submit your interest, and then they vote every year on admitting two new people. Two people come on, two people roll off. Often that means that the people who have a relationship with the city council already are the ones who are getting voted on, whether they're the best qualified or not. I was an unknown to city council when I ran. I got lucky with the having a library background and a resume they couldn't like justify ignoring kind of situation. So sometimes you can push them on it, even if you're not known, be like, look, I'm too qualified for you to say no, or I'm too enthusiastic for you to say no. But getting a sense of how that structure exists wherever you're at matters because it's different. The cities surrounding Worcester have a completely different setup than Worcester does, even though we're like bordering each other. Um, some city councils are going to be run differently than others. Like, without getting too in the weeds, we've got a system here where we have a weak mayor. The city council basically has a ceremonial mayor and appoints the city manager to run everything, and they're supposed to evaluate them, and they never do. There's a small group of us here trying to change the charter to go back to a strong mayor because we're effectively operated as a city by someone unelected, right? And that's in place in a few places in Massachusetts, and it tends to not work out well. But the idea was to remove as much political infighting as possible, I think, because they're supposed to be nonpartisan local government stuff, and it's a mess. But anyway, so finding out the situation and the lay of the land is really vital, I think, and knowing which cause you want to tackle first. And I really like the idea of just showing up and being a stick in the mud, right? Start going to those meetings like Jose was talking about doing and just see how they handle the meeting and then start taking advantage of public comment, right? That law might differ from state to state, but here it's part of every meeting. You have a legal right to speak for 2 minutes on any issue on the agenda at every single meeting. So show up and be a stick in the mud every single time. Eventually, the counselors will get to know you, and then maybe you can leverage some of that. Or attach yourself to an organization. And we do rallies a lot ahead of meetings here. Um, they were not well received in the past year, where we attempted to get city council to call for a ceasefire. There's been a lot of political fighting around that here, and some councilors being accused of being activists instead of like acting in the best interest of the community, because those are somehow different things. Um, that's the correct response. But like just, you got to figure out how to keep the pressure on whatever way you're comfortable. And that might be just showing up and being a body. It might be taking the bullhorn. It might be writing letters to the editor. So like there are ways, no matter your comfort level of being in the public eye, to do this.
And
Can I
Matthew,
can
that's, oh, please go ahead, Jose. Yes.
yeah, can I piggyback off of that?
Please. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just basically adding to what Matthew was saying is that like, and again, just exemplifying with like several organizations that I've either chit-chatted and whatnot, just like there are roles for everybody, like beyond descriptor. Like for instance, like yeah, like as you can tell by this conversation, I have no problem with speaking. And like I once was a very shy kid. I don't want to be shy anymore. Like I'm done being shy. But there are a lot of people that have, for instance, let's just get, like just to put this in there, there's a lot of people that would care about a cause, but for safety reasons, they cannot risk being in public. If you find yourself belonging to a group or an organization or with a cause, there are other roles such as well. can you do flyer design, or can you help us with our website? Are you good at social media, like, and just like writing a post? Are you good at de-escalating situations? Like, there are people that are not very good at reading policy and reading the laws, but for some reason they're very good at talking to people. So, you know what? Like, you know what we need to do right now is like, you don't need to know the laws, but if you can go and talk to your neighbors and just tell them why this cause is important, that's going to go a long way. And other people would say, like, I never want to knock on a stranger's door. Like, absolutely not. It's like, no, but you know what you could do? Like, could you help us write a script that someone who is not shy could do? Like, oh yeah, I can do that. Or to, because again, like, I want to echo a lot of what Matthew said, but I also want to make that there's a distinction between being politically active or following a cause that it's both on the legislative side, which is like, you're going to city council and you're like, and you're following the steps and you're acting within decorum. But then there are other paths that have to be outside of what is legally permissible, precisely because what is happening to you is not covered by the law, such as, for instance, it's okay, like, it should be okay for you to make meals for the homeless and prep meal and hand out food, or advocate in a way of like, for instance, with housing, there's a lot of tenant organizations where, should you go up to your landlord's house with a bullhorn and like and shame them for what they are doing? Like, that is political action that I'm pretty sure someone said, like, well, that's not going to city council, but there's people that would do that. And again, like, it's picking the avenues and picking the method of doing your own doing your own action. um and I just wanted to bring light to that, like, no matter the cause, there are roles for everyone, because like many communities, they require all sorts of people. Like, some people are great at one things, other people are better at others. And that is part of the discussion, to like how to make room for everyone.
That makes me
Yes.
think in this moment, I think it's really important to note the legal risk awareness part, right? Like
Right.
people working in, librarians, teachers, anyone in like a public kind of services role. It's a good chance if you get arrested, even briefly, for political activism, you're going to lose your job. So you think about less public and potentially threatening ways to go about that, right? And that's fine. You got to do what you can. Protecting yourself in that role can also be a part of your activism, right? Like you
Right.
don't want every teacher left to be milk toast on Palestine or milk toast on ICE raiding their schools, right? You want the people who are going to fight back to stay in those positions. And if
Right.
that means they can't march on the street, that's fine. There are other ways. Uh,
Another important element to consider is, in addition to your own safety, is balancing your bandwidth and burnout while still maintaining some semblance of hope. Given the state of our world and our country more specifically, we are all living in some state of burnout, compassion fatigue, isolation. The list goes on and on. How do you first assess what your bandwidth is for taking on additional activities? And I'll open this up to whomever would like to go first.
I'll just jump in right ahead and say, like, that is a very personal question. Not that it's but I'm glad you asked it, but like, that is a very personal question, meaning that like it's up to you to figure out your own level. Because again, like, for instance, um whatever. So I've recently became a parent, and ever since I became a parent, I just do not have the bandwidth to be out every night in every cause that I believe in. I do not have the space to be spending 7 hours in city council. Like, I just don't have that anymore. I have other responsibilities. Um, Whereas in before that, yeah, like, city council meetings were like 5, 6, 7 hours. I'll hang out the whole time and taking notes and, like, and figuring out what I'm going to say next. So yeah, I mean, but by that same token, as you were saying, of like, this is why it's healthy to have and to have a community with whom to work with, because your community is also, responsible for you to be like, hey, like, take a step back, like, you're looking kind of tired, or like, hey, like, I've noticed you lately, like, your mood is shifting, is everything okay? I'm just doing a check-in. Maybe you need to step away for like a week or so and just relax and take a breather. Like, we'll be over here working and ready for waiting for you to come back whenever you're ready. Those are very important, but unfortunately, it really is up to each person to figure out how much they can have that bandwidth. Because there are some people that have no problem with just 20 hours a day working on a cause nonstop. And when you're asking me if they're tired, they're like, what are you talking about? I'm still going. No, and they haven't broken a sweat. And they're, very similar to the previous question. It's like there are other people that like, I can give you 1 hour of a week of this, like, and that hour is going to be super important. Like, I'm going to do so much research in that hour. But that's all I can handle. Why? Because I'm taking care of this, I'm doing this, I have a full-time job, I'm taking this, I got to travel, like it's my commute is X, Y, and Z. Like, but I am committed to this cause, but only so much. And that is also why it's important that a lot of organizations, they kind of break down the level of involvement into like just categories of high, medium, and low, just so they know what to expect out of everyone. And it's fluid, right? Of course. But I do think that it's important to be having those conversations of like, how involved can you get? And if the answer is not very, that is also permissible, because, we are only stronger together. But like, if someone is like, I got nothing else going on. I don't have a job. I'm independently wealthy, and I really believe in this cause. Like, well, fantastic. There you go. Like it's um, you know, so
Matthew, what about you?
Oh, what it would be to be independently wealthy, right? No one on this call understands that, I don't think.
I
Um,
I believe in
yeah,
miracles. What can I say?
right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think about this constantly. I mean, I'm pretty open about the constant state of, I'm pretty sure I've been in some state of burnout for 4 years straight now. And figuring out what level of that I can handle, what level of anything additional I can handle at a time is a moving target. Um, and like I'm sitting here staring at my whiteboard of to-do lists, right? And I've started breaking up. I have a bracketed out section now where it's like these are the larger goals that everything is working toward, right? And so starting to break things out, I find it helpful to break things out into long-term and short-term, especially for anything that involves activism, because the small wins are what help you keep going. Like the long-term goals could be something that's not, I mean, I pick pie in the sky things, right? Like, I still am constantly reading and thinking about degrowth and the necessary of sustainability for stuff like that. That's a long past my lifetime kind of process. And so thinking about the small wins in each step along the way and how we can move the needle even a fraction is necessary when you're looking at these larger fights, because otherwise you're going to feel overwhelmed from the get-go. You'll lose hope at any given moment. And really celebrating those wins is vital, I think, to keeping going. And defining what a win is to you is also going to be personal, right? There's the cause win, and then there's what have you helped accomplish and what does that mean to you? And knowing what those limits are is really important going in, but also they might change over time. 20-year-old activist me thought a win was different than 36-year-old activist me does, right? And then I also find it helpful, and this is going to depend a lot on your profession. Again, librarian, a lot of uh, the kind of activism that gets me targeted on a regular basis, right? There are ways to combine your professional work and your activism, I think, depending on your profession, right? Jose was talking about representation being a big part of that, and I'm always in for library work. It's making sure we build that in, making sure we're defending people's rights to read and everything. And for me, a big part of that has been the fight to make sure children are included in all of our definitions of rights to privacy and rights to access to information. The United Nations says that kids have these things. The United States has failed to ever sign on to those declarations, right? Almost every other country in the world has said that children have these rights. The US does not agree. So thinking about ways that as a profession we can ensure we're protecting children and making sure they have rights to privacy and information is a form of activism for me that I can do both on my own and as part of a professional organization, right? And figuring out which levers to pull when is part of that. And that work keeps me going and gives me hope because, we got to protect the kids, right? Otherwise, what are we doing?
Well, I have Loads more questions for both of you because you're a wealth of information, but I want to pause for a bit and open things up to our attendees. If you have questions and would prefer not to go off mute, please feel free to put them in the chat. But otherwise, if anyone has a question they'd like to pose, please feel free to unmute and jump in. All right, we'll give that a moment. I'll continue to monitor. Oh, Francis, go ahead.
Yeah, just one thing regarding burnout and everything. I'm part of a group of people who organized right after the last November's election. And one of our members is from the military. And he said that, what you can't be on the front lines all the time. And you really, if you feel you got to take care of yourself so you can stay in the fight as long as possible, really. And um, there are moments I know I'm feeling burnout and stuff like that, that I sort of try to, if I can, will take step it back. Or even if my wife is feeling burnt out, like this week was a little tough. And I'm like, you just put all this stuff down. No one's you've done a lot of work already. Don't feel guilty that you just have to step back to take care of yourself. That's basically what he was saying. No soldier is expected to be on the front lines 24/7, and that's how, he looks at the politics with a military eye, and that's sort of, they rotate people out. And if you're part of a group, you can feel fine. Ask somebody to help you take the lifting, across the finish line. If you're feeling like you can't, if you're not doing the job that you want to do, basically. So there's nothing wrong with stepping back at all.
That's so beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that, Francis. And to underscore that further, and certainly we'll take on more questions as well. But for each of you, are there personal or professional resources that you have utilized or called upon, or that you've offered to other individuals if and when you're experiencing burnout?
mean, I'll say I'm a fan of open vent sessions for people. Like, just we'll get on Zoom or we'll go to a bar or whatever and just let it out, right? Like, we're no judgment. Like, just scream if you need to, right?
Right.
It's for me, it's a big part of the community building part thing. Admittedly, like, I'll share part of my time like running one of the ALA roundtables, right? It was middle of the early part of the pandemic. We'd had a really rough transition with a bunch of people resigning and some poor community building that should have not happened. So I started making our meetings a little bit longer, right? Like, I built in half an hour to every time we got together just to check in. Um, and it ultimately, at first it was like, why are we spending so much time on this? But then halfway through the year, it really helped, right? You have to restore trust and faith in each other in the community to keep things going. And so making space for everyone to just share together, I think really matters. And it doesn't have to be sharing about the cause, right? It can be just checking in, like, how's your kids? How are you holding up? What's your favorite show right now? Like, what have you been reading that isn't related to what we're up to? Reminding people that it's okay to have other interests and other things to talk about than just the fight really matters.
Yeah, so so the thing that I can speak to the most is the in my involvement with the Burbank Tenant Union. This conversation has happened many a times, especially because like when the BTU started, it was a group of like I think maybe 5 or 6 people, and a lot of us just like with not a whole lot of knowledge of the legislations and the city charter and we were just very much oriented with like we just want rent control in the city of Burbank. Um, so eventually the more we hung out with each other eventually we became friends and and we were learning as we were going along. But to my point is that like we always made sure to leave a space where kind of like what Matthew was saying of like there were some meetings where it really was just emotional check-ins where we're just like how we're doing, especially like if all of us went to city council and there were 5 of us speaking, but there were 40 landlords who just came in and said like rent control is the death and therefore you should never do anything about it. And like these kids are just complaining and like what do they know? They've never worked a day in their life. And you hear that 40 times for 3 minutes each. Eventually you're just like, man, like are we even that was hard. So we would have sessions where we would just kind of like just process our emotions and just kind of talk and vent them out. But eventually we also just kind of started landing on the idea of like organizing is great and it's also very important, but there's also the need to have a social outings or social gatherings where it's just like we're just going to have a potluck in the park, bring your friends, bring your neighbors, and inevitably it turned into talking shop because that's what always happens. But for the most part, it really was just like we weren't just organizers who were following a cause. To this day, I will say that a lot of us are very close friends. Like we rely on each other. And again, just to bring it up again, when I was about to become a parent, so many of them like were constantly telling me, if you ever need a sitter, I got you. If you need a meal train, we got you. And we're just like, like, or if you ever just like, if you would just want us to come over just like because you've been inside all day with a baby, like we got you. And like, and that kind of those kinds of connections just kind of make it as if like, again, I'm a big supporter of therapy. Therapy is very important, but as someone who has gone to therapy several times, nowadays I feel a little bit more at ease that like I have friends that I can reach out to. I have people that I can talk about these things. I have people to process this with. I have people to discuss ideas. I have people that I can be not nervous about like, is this a dumb idea? Is this too radical? Is this not radical enough? Is this like, am I coming across like a conformist, or is this like, be like, no, we need to talk about this. So providing those spaces for yourself is very crucial, and it does build a sense of hope and community and strength and resilience. Because echoing what Matthew said earlier, is like it's the little things that keep you going, and that's true in every sense. So the stronger you form your community, and like having people around you that you can depend on, not just for the cause but also as friends, also ends up being part of the political pursuit. And it ends up echoing the personal message, because like I'll say this, I mean, one of the political tactics from a lot of oppositions is precisely to make you feel alone, so therefore you don't want to fight back. Because like the reluctant fighter is the best one, because like, oh, no one's going to say anything, they'll just get used to the problem and they're not going to complain. And when you feel alone, when you feel like, well, that's just the times that we live in, that's just how it is, then you're more likely to not pick up and not pick up and fight. But when you have a strong community, sometimes you do, like, all you need to have is just that one friend next to you who's just like, this is messed up, right? Like, we shouldn't be doing this. And that's why I'd be like, yeah, it is, we got to do something. Like, bringing it back to what I said earlier, like one of the organizations that I was associating with, like the Bergman for Free Palestine, like a lot of them were just regular moms, just, they had never been politically involved. They had never done anything like, you go to city council and speak. Are you crazy? What? Why? But eventually, a lot of them were like, hey, what we're seeing is not good, right? Like, you're right, it's not. So yeah, I mean, it's fascinating and it's empowering more than anything. And empowering is something that should not be that cannot be overstated. So
Go ahead, Francis, please. Yeah.
One thing everybody seems to be touching upon is networking,
yeah.
and spending time in Los Angeles in production, animation, and also in comics. That kind of networking is about business, about moving your career forward. This networking is a little more organic, but you need it. Where I am and what I'm doing in Connecticut right now. So Matthew, I would like to talk to you a little bit. I'm born and raised in Mass. Is everything I'm doing now is about networking. Everything I might be doing next year is because of the networking. But it's a different kind of networking. It's a lot more organic. It's not, for lack of a better term, forced. And when it comes to the entertainment or comic book industry, where you need to know people to be able to get something in front of them. So it's a little more laid back. It's not as stressful. It's not as, you just see where it takes you. And I think it leads where, what I think was Matthew, that you might not be great at door knocking, but you might be, find the group that you're producing a website that really works. But it is very important to have a network and be open to creating one because you never know where it takes. And also it helps with getting advice, moving forward. If you want to do something different, you say, hey, I really like this avenue I've been going down. How do I pursue that and
Right.
make that a bigger part of my life, and help people out? But yeah, that is really, it's different. I think we're all looking in comics. We've all networked, so you can turn those on and what has gotten you there and use that in this system too.
Right.
I
And just,
almost
no, go ahead.
as you say, this is not a perfect or clean differentiation, but I think of those two kinds of networking as you've got LinkedIn networking and you've got mutual aid networking, and they're distinct things. And I love the mutual aid side. LinkedIn makes my head hurt. I understand the necessary evil part of it, right? Um,
Right.
but they've got two different purposes, and learning to do both I think is really important. And it's important to be able to turn off the LinkedIn side of it for a lot of this work. Um, which in comics can be really difficult to unlearn doing that all the time.
Well, and one thing I'll note, just to underscore why we're doing this and all of the events that we're doing this year for the Build Your Community initiative is because we recognize that, Francis, as you very well said, that we are forced to be on all the time. We're forced to be putting a facade, that is very active and requires a lot of mental and emotional bandwidth from you. We want to do more events like this, and we hope that events like this spur you to do the same. One of the things we've done this year is a quarterly potluck at our home here in Los Angeles, which is a very laid back, come bring food. Don't, if you don't have the means or resources, we've got plenty here for you to eat, but just hang out with people. Spend an afternoon or an evening enjoying folks' company, talking about whatever it is that you'd like to talk about. And it is not a business or an industry networking event. It is very much simply a community, showing that you are not alone out there. We'll be continuing those all throughout next year and in perpetuity as well. But yes, I think that I wholeheartedly agree with what everyone is saying, and we will definitely continue doing more of these things, if only to share that number one, folks are not alone, and number two, you too can do things like this with whatever resources you have. So thank you. Um, Anyone else? We have time, I think, for one more question or comment, if anyone would like to jump in. If not, Matthew, I have one more question for you specifically. Given your work in the library profession, book bans are very much at the forefront of our minds, both as readers, as cared citizens, and many of us as creators or some facet of the creative industry as well. We are in a new era of censorship, and these evolved over time. So, depending on your location, the tenacity and volume of these calls may vary. What should community members know about the various ways that these calls for censorship occur, and how can they best support both their local library and library professionals?
Right. So many things. I think it's important to start by saying that these challenges to books in local libraries and schools might look like they're local and organically happening, but they're really not. It's a coordinated campaign across the country. It's just stronger in certain places than others because of existing prejudices and biases already there. People often I've mentioned this before. I'm a Kentuckian in Massachusetts, so I think about the dichotomy of the different parts of the country a lot and the way people talk about different parts of the country. This isn't a southern state problem. It's an everywhere problem. We literally had police come into a local elementary school hunting down genderqueer in Massachusetts, right? It's not like it only has happened in quote unquote red states, which is a bad distinction anyway. Um, but so it's important to note that the specific instances of these are going to be local, but they're coming through a well-funded national network of uh, private money, and Moms for Liberty is a national campaign, right? They've got chapters popped up all over the place. There's probably one in your state. I think at this point there's one in every state, regardless of where you are. And they'll show up with often an entire list of books that they say shouldn't be allowed in a library. And depending on how well supported the library already is, and depending on what kind of policies they've taken the time to put in place, there are roadblocks for this kind of large scale banning, right? For example, here in Worcester, we just did the challenges policy 2 years ago to indicate that like you can't hide behind anonymity. You have to fill out a form. You have to put your name on it. You have to be willing to stand up and say why you want a specific book removed. And you can only challenge one book at a time. None of this give us a sheet of 100 things that needed to be taken out. So if you're not in a library space, like helping encourage your libraries to create these kind of policies, and often the library gets to set their own policy, but in some communities, city government's going to have oversight and say over things, right? Sometimes there are state laws that change how libraries can operate. So start by talking to your library staff. Ask them how their policies work, what they look like, how they're organized, and what kind of help they might want on the ground. Um, but I'm also always telling people, I don't think we've had more than one guest at a library board meeting here in this 5 years I've been on the board, right? These are open public meetings that people just don't show up to. So showing up and just being even if you don't say anything, being a physical presence and showing that you care enough to be there and to learn and listen goes a long way. And it also goes a long way to tell your librarian what they're doing right and that you appreciate them. I so often comics people, you probably get this with reviews online, right? Like you hear from the negative people all the time. Positive people who have positive experiences are quiet about it or they're gushing about it. There's really no in between. Go to your librarians and tell them what they're doing right and why you appreciate them, because usually they're just getting like, I'm going to assume this is an adult room. Normally they're just getting shit on. If someone has feedback, it's like, hey, you suck and here's why. Go up to them and say, hey, you rock and here's why, to help kind of counterbalance the negativity, especially if there's a way for you to highlight any specific event that's going on, right? And this is another counter for me in burnout is uh, I'm a medical librarian. The comics work I do is what keeps me going, right? My day-to-day medical academic library work is what pays the bills. The comics work is what keeps me engaged and happy to keep working in the profession, even when I want to bang my head through my desk, right? So think about what ways you can help increase the library joy, as Michael Threes would say, right? Um, so yeah, that's a quick and dirty version of this. Like I think we've done the whole webinars and presentations about banned books and challenges with
We
more advice.
have,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's a really good one.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I want to note that we are at time and I want to be mindful of everyone's schedules. Thank you, Hillary, for your note and for being here. It's always good to see you. And thank you for all of your work in the library field as well, Hillary. It is very much appreciated. I want to say a big thank you again to Jose and Matthew for sharing their time and expertise. Obviously, we have kept this at an hour. There are so many more discussions, rabbit holes that we could go into, questions we could ask. But I appreciate both of you sharing your experiences, your insights, and your time with us, most importantly. And for everyone who has attended, thank you for sharing your time and your questions and insights. And we will be posting this for folks who were unable to attend live and in person. But again, I will point folks to the Fanbase Press website and social media throughout this year and honestly continuing on throughout the years to come. We will be doing more virtual and in-person events like this. If there's something, a topic that you would like to learn more about, that you feel that you have expertise in, that you would like to share your insights, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are happy to do all of these all the time. So, and we want to reach folks who need to hear the information, the insights that you can offer, and the questions that you want to discuss. So, all of that is to say, again, a really big thank you to everybody. Thank you for being here. We wish you well in these challenging times. Please take care. Whatever personal and professional resources you need to utilize, they are out there for you, and we hope you take advantage of them. But again, thank you. Go, Jose, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to throw just one more thing in there before we get out, where it's just like, and again, just trying to be like more upfront about things, is that like, um, whenever you find a cause, like I just want to point out, like, if you don't fight for your own self-interest, there are a lot of people out there that are very interested in imposing their interest on you, and they are very much relying on your complacency. So that is another reason why I think it's very important to get involved, and why I think it's very crucial to be loud and to be outspoken, and to fight hard. And yes, even with the consideration of like the cost, but I do want to just kind of throw that in there, that it's like, predominantly for like a lot of people that say like, I'm not political, I don't want to get involved. It's like, well, someone is already interested in making sure that this impacts you. So I I don't have anything other than just like, it's better if you do, because you will be giving them, you will be opposing what you don't want. So
Well said. Thank you for that, Jose. And again, really big thank you to everybody. Thank you for being here today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
yeah, thank you for having us, and thank you for the space.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Of course. Thanks, everybody.